I'm going to call the meeting to order for the special meeting for the Hollister Airport Advisory Commission, Monday, February 26, 2024 at 6:30 p.m. Can I have everyone rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? Item number 3, introduction of new commissioners. We have 2, which is great. We now have 5, so if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't have a quorum tonight because we're missing one. So I'd like District 1 appointment Andres Rodriguez to do a little introduction, and then next we'll do Mayor appointment Sean Herrera, who's at the end over here. I know both of them personally and have worked with them a long time, and they're great additions to our commission. Andres.
Thank you so much, Renee, Chair. My name is Andres Rodriguez. I'm from here, Hollister, California, and I'm very, fortunate to be appointed to be on this advisory commission. Little background, like I mentioned, born and raised in Hollister. I've always been fascinated here by the Hollister Airport. And so, however, I can provide my experience with being from here, having my background in political science, Chicano studies, attending law school in Sacramento, and also social work at USC, and currently, if this is important, working for Speaker Rivas here currently, just having the resources to really see how we can provide the most up-to-date information here for our commission. So thank you so much for the opportunity. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Rodriguez.
I'm Sean Herrera. I am a resident out in the county. I'm actually the only county resident who's representing on the commission now. Appreciate the appointment from Mayor Casey. Local entrepreneur from San Jose. Been here about 6 years now, and also just good to be serving.
Thank you both. Welcome. And now we'll take the roll call. Chairperson Renee Wells here. Vice Chair John Hughes. Commissioners Eric Martin. Here. Commissioner Andres Rodriguez. Here. Commissioner Sean Herrera.
Present.
Airport Director, Executive Secretary Jeff Crushu.
Here.
So we have one absent, which is Vice Chair John Hughes. Everyone else is present. Verification of agenda posting. The agenda for the Special Airport Advisory Commission of the City of Hollister meeting of February 26, 2024, posted on the bulletin board at City Hall on February 22nd, 2024 at 10 a.m. per Government Code Section 54954.2. Next item, public input. Do we have any public input? This is a time for everyone in the audience to speak on any item on or not on the agenda and within the subject matter jurisdiction of the commission. Speaker cards are available in the lobby and are to be completed and given to staff before speaking. When staff calls your name, please come to the podium, state your name and city for the record, and speak to the commission. Each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes with a maximum of 30 minutes per subject. Please note that state law prohibits the commission from discussing or taking action on any item not on the agenda. Do we have any input?
We do have speaker cards. All right, and you can go first. Okay. Yep.
I just wanted to ask about the bathrooms, and I know it's on the agenda, but I just wanted to share how it's been a huge inconvenience for for us. I'm literally the last hangar against the wall by Cal Fire, so having to haul passengers all the way across the property has been really difficult. So I'm hoping to hear positive news. It sounds like that's on the agenda, but I just wanted to share when it's been unfortunate that that's been out of commission for quite a while.
And could you just state your name for the record?
Phil Stofora.
Thank you. It is an item on the agenda, so we'll get
Yeah.
to that when it comes up on the agenda.
Thank you, guys.
Wow.
Thank you.
Any other public comment?
Chair, we have Mark Sterrett.
I'll say that for the agendized items.
We're letting you do public comment now. They're-
Normally you don't talk about agendized items, is that correct?
There's only one opportunity for public comment this evening.
No, this should be, you should be able to discuss what's on the agenda under that agenda item.
That's not how the airport commission agendas has been
That's how
published.
City Council
That is how city council is, but you'll recall that this is how these meetings have been run for, well, as long as I've been coming. Yeah.
I've been coming for many years and we've always had that.
Right, so let me get this straight, if it's agendized, you can't talk about it?
No, this right now is the opportunity to discuss items both on or not
Not on the
on.
agenda.
Both, on and not on the agenda.
Okay, I've never heard that before.
Yeah, that's what the chair
I thought you were
explained.
stuttering, sorry. Renee.
No.
No, we
Right.
didn't have a particular notation on the agenda that stated when you could speak if there was an item on the agenda, so we just adjusted public input as on or not on the agenda.
I heard you say that, I just thought you said it wrong. Okay. In that case, I'll talk quickly about the airport rents and a real quick history about that. A lot of you may know it or may not know it. When they built the new hangars over on the west side, they virtually couldn't rent them. And so what they wound up having to do, because the old east hangars were so much cheaper, so what they had to do is they wound up raising the rent on the east hangars and lowering what they wanted on the west hangars, and then they were able to rent them. And it is a captive audience, the tenants. Mike Chambliss always said we can't be charging too much because we have a waiting list. But our waiting list actually is pretty small now, but that can fluctuate. But we have what I would like to see us do is come up with a real format that displays what is a fair and reasonable rent for Hollister Airport. Okay, there is actually an FAA regulation that says you cannot charge more than is reasonable for those using the airport. The airport is there for us pilots. That's the purpose of the airport. It's for commerce. It's for the can be brought to the city, true, but it's for the pilots, regardless of how you look at it. So what I would like to see is we do a formalized study of what is reasonable rents, and we do it, and we start off with a radius from, say, San Jose Airport south, and maybe Bay Area radius north, and that would put us in the south direction. It would give us airports like Salinas and Watsonville and Marina and even Monterey. And what the idea is, you can't compare real estate prices with the Bay Area to real estate prices in Hollister. You have to make it look, you can try to do that, but I'm sorry, nobody's gonna lend you money based on that type of an appraisal. So we need to have is a realistic view of what is a fair rent. And just to give you an example, Salinas has a control tower, much nicer, bigger runways than we have, and their new hangars on the west side rent for $241 a month. The hangars on the north side, the old hangars, and I have one there, it's much nicer than the hangar that I'm in currently, and that rents from $170. Rents just went up to $220, and the airport manager there raised the rent 8% last year because of the CPI, and I had to tell him the CPI is only 4.25. He says, "Yeah, but I forgot to do it last year." So that's a business practice that none of us would be allowed to do in private practice. But if you're a city, you could probably do that, and they did. So that's what Watsonville rent, 266, 290. We're looking at 450 for an old crappy hangar. Livermore, I think, is a good example also. It's in the 277 older hangars, 374 new. Napa,
Chair Wells, his
Say-
3 minutes has expired.
I got 3 minutes right here. So I got 3 minutes to go.
That's actually not functioning. So.
It didn't work.
No,
that one over there is not
we don't turn that on.
All right.
Yeah.
So what I'd like to do is have a real study put forward, because I think it'll benefit the tenants at the airport. Thank you.
Is there any more public comment?
Thank you. The name is optional. You left it blank, so we could just go ahead and you can go ahead and just introduce yourself. Okay. That's fine.
So my name is Ben Harvey, and I'm a tenant at the airport and also operate from the airport. Could I have my slip back, because I was writing those down. I'm sorry, I didn't have opportunity to look at these rules, or the changes or definitions that were going to be presented for this meeting, so I'm just going to try to go through them quickly. I didn't get to the very end of them, but I think some of them are worth considering. So let's see, 1324 130 fire regulations. So no aircraft shall be fueled or defueled.
Excuse me, could you just let us know what item on the agenda that you're bringing up?
So it's 1324 110, 1324 130B, 1324 290, 1324 330.
Airport rules and regulations.
Yeah. Do we want to wait until
Just
that?
wanted to make sure everyone knew you're talking about rules and regulations.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Go
ahead. So let's see. Well, let's go to 130. So 130B is no aircraft shall be fueled or defueled while the engine is running while in the hangar or enclosed place. Fueling can be done in a manner equipped with the connection to the ground. So I think there are some helicopters that come in and operate and do hot refueling at the pumps. So is that precluding that?
I don't believe there's any discussion tonight on all of these rules.
Oh,
This
okay.
is just for FYI for the new commissioners and for us to review. We are going to be talking about item 13.24.120, access to runways, taxiways, or
Okay.
apron.
Okay, and that was the other one that I was going to ask
But
about.
if you would like something agendized for next time, we can do that.
Okay, so I'll just pause then and say that the 1324-120 access to runways is something I'd like to talk about. That we often have to cross the runway and use standard procedures to cross the runway that are acceptable for an airport that is non-towered. I think it can be done and has been demonstrated over the last 8 years that I've been operating in this airport that it can be done safely, and so it seems unnecessary to add an additional restriction to our ability to use the airport. Thank you.
Is there any other public input?
Should we talk about the other items that are on the agenda?
Sure, you just need to fill out a card for each item, or you can put numerous items on your yellow card.
Go for it. Thank you.
When Jeff became airport director, I made an appointment, went in and talked to him and discussed where the CAL FIRE's helicopter has been parked in the past. And that really wasn't a subject he wanted to talk about, and so I was dismissed on that. But a point I'd like to make is that that pad that they put there wasn't safe. I told them it wasn't safe. I told the city council it wasn't safe. It turned out it wasn't safe. So they located onto the ramp, and in that they damaged a couple of airplanes. And so now they are out away from everybody, which is a good place for them to be. Lately, they're operating off of where CAL FIRE typically parks because they're gone during the winter. But the idea is it's not good. They don't like being out in the field out there because it takes them too long to get out there. But that's really not true because it takes them a minute or two to drive there, but they can instantly take off from that location where sitting where they are now, or if they get back onto if they build that new pad, then what's going to happen is they cannot take off anytime they want to because they put up such a ferocious wake, all right? And the studies are there's a T-34 following a Black Hawk helicopter 3 miles out. It gets rolled 45 degrees. 2 miles out, it gets rolled 90 degrees. And at 1 mile out, it gets rolled 180 degrees. So for that, I watched them this weekend. They're sitting there, and there was a fair amount of traffic, beautiful weekend. And so what I'm seeing is they could not take off if they wanted to take off because of airplanes landing. There was a lot of planes in the pattern, and they just... if you want to YouTube it, it'd be a good experience for you non-pilots to see what a helicopter can do to an airplane. It's pretty amazing. So, I still got time? All right. So, what I'd like to do is Mike Shamlis and Tony told me there was no other place for the airport for that helicopter to be on the airport. It's the only place that they could be is on that presented pad. Well, now they are on a different spot, so that wasn't necessarily the case. It was like you have to be willing to look and find a spot. It's too disruptive for them to be in that location. There's stuff in the FAA regulations that say that a helicopter is not supposed to take off within 200 feet of an airplane. It depends on the size of the helicopter, but I'm sure with that size helicopter, it's going to be at least 200 feet. So it's not a good location. That location needs to be reconsidered. They are in a good location presently out in the field out there, and I think that's where they need to stay. Thank you.
And for the record, that was Mark Sterrett. So if you're doing public comment, if you can first say your name so that we have it on the record. There are people that are listening online, and so we just want to make sure I know who he is and you in the room know who he is, but we want to make sure people who are listening also know. Thank you. Any other public comment? All right, we'll move to consent items, which is just one. Do I have a motion from the commissioners to approve the consent item?
Motion to approve I motion to approve the January 24th minutes of the Airport Advisory Committee.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor? Ayes?
Aye.
Great, thank you. Item number 8, commission business. We'll have report outs on the removal of the old military buildings.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So the last meeting, we discussed the potential looking into a brownfield grant for funding the removal of the military buildings, because at this point, without a funding source, we're not going to be able to move forward with the demolition and removal of those old military buildings. So the technical piece of applying for a brownfield grant is, first you must be designated as a brownfield site, and currently we are not designated with that, and so much further research would need to be done as to whether that would affect any of our you know, how much that would impact our efforts to do NEPA and CEQA under the airport in terms of the other areas where we have projects going on, such similar as to the Runway 6 safety improvement project that's going on now. So, yeah, at this point, brownfield grant is probably not looking at as one of our better opportunities.
Can you just briefly tell us the cost of, the current cost of removal of those buildings?
We
Or
received
projected?
an estimate about 24 months ago for approximately 324,000 as one estimate. That was the low estimate, and we had another one that was as high as 429,000. And that is due to the fact that the older military construction does have hazardous materials in there that need to be abated. So it has lead paint and it has asbestos.
I know that for the past probably 2 years, maybe longer, I've asked about the brownfield grants, and was before your time, airport director, but has there been any, it seems like the airport staff for the city should have been involved in looking what a designated brownfield site is and how we could apply for that. Is there any, are there any staff working on that to find out what it is, what does it mean to be a designated brownfield site? Because that's a lot of money and it's out there.
Yes, I think I'll probably end up being the staff that will be researching that and going forward, so.
Maybe some of us can help. I'll look into it too. Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay.
Next item is HAA building.
Yes, so technically this is one of the converted spaces that happen when you have a T-hanger building, you typically have little kind of like half units at the end of a building. So one is this is an actual converted space that instead of being part of a hangar and creating a little extra larger hangar, so we have a bathroom and a conference room space. And it's my understanding that this has been kind of a historically used as a conference room. So we reported out that we had a water leak from a heater, so it wasn't a roof leak, but the water did get into the room. And so the city has been in process with an insurance claim to come in and have it remediated because there was suspicion that there was mold. Currently they've got 2 truckloads worth of remediation going on so far. They were here today as well. So they were here last week and today. So at the point that we get the clearance to go in there, airport staff was going to clean up the bathroom and do just a minimal amount of remodeling, but to get that done and then look at working on the conference room next. So we understand the priority is to get the bathroom open to the point of the speaker before the people that are on that far end towards CAL FIRE and in those hangars. It is quite a distance to the nearest public bathroom. So it's certainly, the bathroom is something we're looking at trying to get in there just as quickly as we can. I don't want to say definitely within a 3-week window, but that would be my target is 3 weeks. So.
Is it possible to at some point when it's safe to do so have EAA staff or EAA representation, such as myself, I'm the president, and the HAA, Ruth Erickson, go into that area for where our conference room is. And also we have a meeting room that's next to the bathroom where we store things, not a meeting room, a storage room, where we have had equipment for a long time, including a barbecue and things like that we used for indoor and outdoor events for our chapter. We haven't been able to go in for months and months and months. We're losing members because there's no place to meet. And it would be very good to be able to go back in there and just see what we have and assess what, if there's some equipment. I noticed some of the blinds are kind of half on and half off, and I think we both organizations wonder when it's going to be. We need a time. We would like a timeline so that we can have the meetings again. Maybe have a Young Eagles event. Bring more exposure to the airport in a good way.
Yeah.
And so if we could have that, just if it's two of us that can go in there and look and just write down or take some pictures so that we know what we have and what needs to be replaced due to the damage. Because I know you have an insurance claim, but does that include some of our equipment that's been in there?
They have not involved me at this point in the insurance claim, so I can try to raise some of those issues and see if I can get some more information about what's been included in the claim. And certainly once we get clearance from the city staff that we can safely go in, that's been abated, we can look to arrange a meeting. And I think just from a higher level standpoint, we need to meet as staff and then the two organization representatives about the continued use of that area as well.
I agree.
Okay.
And there's some projector equipment and stuff in there. We just want to make sure
And
it's safe.
certainly to the concern that you're talking about losing members and not being able to conduct meetings, we do have the airport conference room there in the regular airport admin building, which would be very appropriate to let you guys hold meetings in that space. So
Thank you. I appreciate that. I guess I forgot to ask if there was any questions from the commission on any of the two items, the removal of the old buildings or the EA.
Yes, I had a quick question on the item A, the removal of old military buildings. You mentioned that it was a brownfield site, and we're in the need of funds, especially regarding CEQA. Have we reached out to our local Congresswoman Lofgren? Maybe their office can help out with any of those sorts of funds, because I know when we reach out to grants and things like that, we always, just gotta ask.
I'm not sure that was in particularly expressly communicated to Zufgren's office at this point. I do know that the city was putting together kind of a earmark request list of items for funding consideration. So we did include some thoughts on some funding items, opportunities for the airport. So we can look at that again.
Great. Yeah. I just always recommend, especially working with constituents, that, step one, reach out to your local elected officials to see what the most updated opportunities are for our local, initiatives. So I just wanted to, bring that up as well, especially if this is more of a federal level, and then with CEQA with the state as well. Thanks.
Thank you for that. Any other commissioners?
Yeah, Director, have you looked into the option of not taking the buildings down? Or are they completely at a point where they have to come down? Or have we looked at the option to, whether it be city or private funds, to revamp them rather than take them down, add to them and add value to the airport?
It's my understanding that they are in a state of disrepair enough that it makes sense to demolish them and remove them. I also would say that just based on the idea of trying to grow the revenues and the opportunities of attracting businesses to the airport, that they're on that public side of the fence there, kind of that quad area, if you will, from San Felipe as you come in, past the restaurant, clear up to the Elks Lodge. That area really ought to be looked at as kind of like, how do we master plan that, and how do we make ourselves maybe more attractable to some business interest there. Yeah, so I think we would probably benefit more so from taking those down and looking at trying to
Revamp them.
revamp that whole space.
Yep, great, thank you.
And just a notation that the brownfield grants are also not just for removal of the buildings. They want you to rebuild, and they'll help fund that so that you can bring more economic development to the airport and to the city. So it's a really good resource, and it's an ongoing funding source, and so we should really pursue that as much as we can. And I think we should also get the city grant consultants that the city is paying every month to help us with that. Any other comments from the commission on items A and B? If not, we'll move on to item C.
Yes, so we reported out previously that the city council is desiring to hold the city's 4th of July fireworks show there at the airport. And so basically where we are with that process is we've met with the recreation staff, which is the department that mainly plans these types of events for the city. So we had a nice initial meeting and walked through and talked about some of the limitations, trying to minimize impacts to the current tenants and that sort of situation. They felt that there would be somewhere between 450 cars and probably around 900 to 1,000 people in attendance based on the last city fireworks show at a park. So, you know, again, with our limited space there on the east side, trying to park in open spaces out there by the restaurant building, the admin building up by the Elks Lodge, etc. That certainly presents challenges to the airport in terms of that, and having them understand what's involved in terms of crowd control, particularly if we bring people inside the fence, mostly at the north end of the apron there. So, you know, we would have to move aircraft. We would need to assemble some barricades so people can't just walk around freely on the airport, because it's not that kind of thing. They've got to stay regulated to their space, right? So we're just kind of working through the logistics on a kind of preliminary basis with the recreation staff. So our next follow-up meeting is actually on March 6th, and so we'll have, from there we'll plan some third and a fourth meeting where we'll start to involve the police department and the fire department. So.
Is that March 6th meeting open to the public, or is it a city?
No, that's internal city department stuff, yeah.
All right, we'll just expect a report out at the next meeting, the airport commission meeting.
Okay.
Well, that might, after that meeting, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Any other comments from other commissioners?
Regarding the 4th of July, I know a lot of folks have reached out, you know where to go to. Usually it's Maze, and now they're at the airport. Public safety wise, have there been any issues or any top issues that the local law enforcement have brought up? Or just maybe, you mentioned parking, if they park maybe across the street, anything that we might need to take into account?
Yeah, my understanding is it was at least done once previously at the airport. There were issues raised by the airport staff that they had concerns about how this would be conducted at the airport. And so, you know, from an airport perspective, we can't just have people running all over the airport. That doesn't work. You also need to keep perspective that we are a CAL FIRE base, and that's prime fire season. So, you know, closing the runway for a period of time has to be coordinated, and you know, it should be done so with a lot of reservation and consideration to how you would make it work if they need to leave in an emergency. So it's not that these things can't be done, but certainly crowd control, parking directions, where we go, what we don't go. One of the issues was at the last time it was held at the airport was a tenant who had the code came through the back side, the west side gate, and then bunches of people evidently flooded onto the airport property and just started driving around. So they had as many as 20 cars that just drove wherever they thought appropriate to park and watch the fireworks show. And, you know, we have ground leases over there, so there's space and there's businesses, and that's not the intent. When you come inside the fence, you are now in the airport operations area where aircraft are moving, et cetera, and that's that should be treated with some reservation.
And just to add to that, we did talk, I think, at the last commission meeting about the traffic control on San Felipe, because that's going to be a major issue too. And the airport director has working with the police department on that. So that's their control really, but it does involve the airport.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things was there was concern that like at the last park that was held at, that, you know, when you had a large group of cars and vehicles and people all wanting to leave at the same time, and so, you know, it's the ins and the outs. Well, the airport's no different right now. Currently, we only have one entrance, and so we're trying to look at options to see how we might make that better, and that's where we would involve the police department for traffic control as well to help that.
Any other comments from the commission? Okay, we'll move on to item D as in David, FAA Airport Improvement, or AIP, 5-year Airport Capital Improvement Program, ACIP. It's a long.
Yeah. So again, we provided you guys all binders, and that is one of the sections in the binders. And I think at the last meeting, for Commissioner Hughes, Chair Wells, and Commissioner Martin, we had kind of said if you had questions that you would email us. So I was just reporting out that at this point we have not received any questions on that. So the stand is still there, or the offer to receive questions by email, so that if need be and appropriate, I would correspond with the airport engineer who helps us to put that together to provide any answers.
Do the two new commissioners, would you like it to be brought back for the next agenda, or do you just want to provide comments to the airport director in lieu of that?
I'll provide comments as I need to.
Likewise.
Thank you. There are no more comments on item D. We'll go to the Cal Far Hawk helipad.
Yes. So, so my understanding is that the before my arrival here, that the airport had pretty much agreed to allowing Cal Fire to construct a concrete pad, and so when we're talking about the relevance of this area, it is at the south end of the current apron. It's adjacent to and actually connects to the parallel taxiway Alpha, which is your northwest primary taxiway, and it does come over across and comes up to the edge of the pavement surface that is in front of the hangars. In particular, one of the previous speakers here has mentioned he has a hangar right across from us. And I believe that there was some valid concerns expressed about how CAL FIRE did attempt to put the Black Hawk in that location using kind of a mastic pad like thing, and as they were operating from there, whether they were taking off exactly from that spot or whether they were edging towards the taxiway, they were evidently putting enough power on to the props that it was actually starting to lift some of the mastic, which would be of concern. The speaker did provide me a video that did show that the Black Hawk operating right there did blow grass and weeds, and so certainly there was vegetation coming across that way from the downdraft. So to the extent that we've asked CAL FIRE to upgrade to a concrete pad, that would resolve some of the issues of the blowing vegetation going towards the hangars. In terms of operation, they should not be launching from that parking space. I'm in agreement with the speaker on that particular issue, and that will be something that I will be emphasizing with CAL FIRE if they're in that position. So I asked the CAL FIRE battalion chief to give me a little space analysis, which is in a diagram that I believe you were all provided with. That's this diagram, and for members of the public, there's up here. So in my concern, you have the looking downward at the picture here on your left side, you have the parallel taxiway alpha. So we are a B2 designated design in terms of our taxiway. So the taxiway object free area is 65 feet. And therefore from center line 65 feet, I told the CAL FIRE gentleman that you need to prove to me that the Black Hawk can reside in this space and not break that 65-foot taxiway object free area from the rotors, not from the nose of the plane, right? And so that's exactly what this is demonstrating, is that they can park, if they park all the way up towards Alpha, they can be at the 65-foot mark, and that leaves 86 feet from the rotor over to the center line of the kind of quasi-taxi lane that goes across in front of the hangars, where the speaker is located as one of the hangars there. And so if you actually go on the Google surface, the Google Earth, I was able to do a ruler from this theoretical position over to the front of the hangars. It is approximately between 100 and I'd say 89 feet to 200 feet, depending on exactly where you are. And I'm not going to split hairs on that issue. In my experience, I am not aware of a defined requirement from FAA that there be 200 feet away from a helicopter taken away, but there is definitely an understanding that helicopters produce downwash, and so they are not supposed to fly over aircraft at any point in time. As a matter of fact, it is typical that helicopters are asked to follow the same taxiway patterns as a regular aircraft would be, although it's still pilot in command can operate at their will, but they should not be flying over the buildings, and they should not be flying over aircraft. So with that, my recollection of my conversation with the former speaker was one that I thought we had an engaging conversation. We talked about where would be an alternate location if it wasn't this. The gentleman pointed out that across the field on the west side, there's a pad now where they've been operating from. That also means then that CAL FIRE has to cross the runways, which is another topic on tonight. So for discussion, but that being said, that is within their 15-acre ground lease, and so that is going to become a construction site. So the aircraft cannot stay over there as construction activity takes place. And then lastly, I would say that, so again, we've proven that this can be there and not infringe on the taxiway object-free areas, and this apron can benefit the airport in being parking for regular fixed-wing aircraft or smaller helicopters. It gives us more apron space to utilize in the future. So it's a benefit to us, and we're getting that, on the CAL FIRE funding versus the airport funding. So with all things being said, I think that's I think there's not many other good locations when you look up and down on the east side, which again, CAL FIRE would like to be as close to their current location, which is just kind of to the south of this. So yeah, the other side, the west side, like I said, is not a feasible location. Probably in another 6 months or so that they should be trying to break ground, and so we would hope that that the plane would need to move at that point, the aircraft. And it is also my understanding that we offered other empty hangars on the airport for any of the concerned tenants, and that was not something that the speaker chose to take the offer of relocating to another hangar. So.
And CAL FIRE
Right.
does pay for that space. It's part of their lease, right?
This would be part of their lease. Yeah.
And when they go to break ground, do you know what the time frame is for completing the CAL FIRE facility on the other side?
I don't at this point. Yeah, the funding with the state is it's definitely challenging, but it's a priority to them that they think of our location as being very integral to their plans for wildfire suppression. So
I think it would just be good to know the impact that the airport is going to have during that construction phase. So whenever you can get a report back, I'd like to add that to the next agenda just to keep it on there. So we talk about that moving forward. Do any other commissioners have any comments or questions about that item?
And just to finish up for me, I did appreciate the former speaker coming and meeting with me and talking about this as one of his items to discuss. And I haven't had any other tenant come to me personally and ask for a meeting to discuss this. So.
I see there's a hand in the public, but we can't take comments after the fact, so.
That doesn't mean you're supposed to take comments.
We can agendize it and bring it up again at the next meeting. If there are no other comments from the commission, we will move on to item F, as in Frank, hangar rents. Report out on the hangar rents.
Yeah, so hangar rents is an interesting discussion. Obviously, I think airports in this area in particular, we are kind of in the area of influence where, like, it's been announced that the Reed Hillview Airport is going to be closing and stuff. So there is a certain amount of speculation that we're going to be under considerable demand, the surrounding airports. But to that extent, I joined in October, and I would say probably the tenured office staff at this point has background back to 2018. So the value of the hangar rents was established prior to 2018. In her experience, it's been annual increases that have created the price increase to be at the level we're at, which was represented correctly. It's about $456, I believe, for a T hanger, and we're talking about a standard T hanger. So we have a comparative exercise that is done for us that basically tells us that if you compare us or look at us compared to Salinas and Watsonville for a standard 1,000 square foot T hanger, we are more expensive. We are less than San Martin is for the comparable T hanger. If you go to the executive hanger size, which for this exercise they compared 10,000 square foot hangers, ours aren't quite 10,000 feet, but ours are 50 by 50s or larger. And we do have oversized T hangers that have a 50-foot door opening as well. So kind of considering those being the larger hangers, our rents are, we are the third highest on the list, and so we weren't in second place in that situation. So so that's kind of the comparable in terms of the region. What I would say is that one measurement of your rates at your airport is to take a look and say, what is your demand, which would be our hanger wait list. So in terms of standard T hangers, we have 13 individuals that pay money to be on the list for a wait list. And for the larger hangers, we actually have 11 people that are paying for an annual fee to be on the hanger wait list. And the mix of that is about 50% local, which we consider Hollister, San Juan Bautista, Tres Pinos, and Gilroy all to be local. And then it's about 50% is actually up in the Bay Area, so north of Gilroy, that is on the list. Now that being said, there was a point made about what FAA would deem as a fair market charge. So it's been my experience that there is an exercise that is called a airport rent study. And so an official airport rent study would actually take us and look at our airport, which we are a former military base. We have old infrastructure, and then it would also look at what services are available on the field. And so you would find 10 or so comparable airports that are comparable in those types of factors. And then you would have a component of regional airport comparison, and then the weighting between the two categories, obviously the 10 airports with the military and similar age of infrastructure, et cetera, history would be more weighted. And then something that we can explore going forward is that, FAA's mantra is, I think they've recognized the fact that if you have leases, whether it be a ground lease or a T hanger lease, et cetera, but in particular these aircraft leases, if you have a lease that's been going on for many, many years with an annual increase, then eventually you can be paying more than what is really the market rate value for that space. So they have kind of been saying that it would be a really good idea to put a market reset provision in the leases. And the way that they've kind of laid out their philosophy is you would do a airport rent study, and then everybody would be set to that rate based on the result of the rent study. Then you would go through a period of 8 to 10 years of annual increases, and then you would do the next rent study, and then you use the market rate reset provision to reset it based on that market study. And the thought is that would probably reduce it to a point lower than where it is at year 8 or 10 in that period after annual increases, right? So again, that looks that's an interesting concept, and I think that's great, but trying to introduce that into longstanding leases is an issue to overcome, and I think also it's a little bit difficult for governing bodies to understand that you would do a process where you go along and then reduce revenue, but so that's certainly something that we'll be looking at, but a rent study, I've not seen any evidence of a rent study ever being conducted here at the Hollister Airport, so that's something that I think we would want to do. But again, we've got many priorities in terms of the funding, so it may take a little while, but that's something I'd like to see us get started with soon.
Thank you. Just before I go to the other commissioners, as a tenant at the airport, I'm not allowed to really speak on it because I'm paying rent. So I can be involved but I'm relying on the other commissioners to speak up that don't have space at the airport or not renting hangars. So I will rely on you to give feedback, and also the public when they're able to. So do any commissioners have any comments or questions?
Is there an organization that can do this for us, and is it going to be charged to do the analysis?
So typically when I did the rent study at one of my former airports, we engaged with our planning consultants, and so yes, we used an actual consultant to help us document and do the research for it. So
The wait list that we have, is that a normal type of a backlog, or is that shy, or is that heavy backlog?
I would actually have thought there might have been more on the list, just out of perception of based on our general accessibility from various areas within the region. And when you do think that somebody from Gilroy can drive down here fairly easily, you can obviously, it's 40 minutes from San Jose to get down here. On many days, sometimes it'll be more than that, but so I was actually surprised that it wasn't a little bit more than what we actually have here.
Is it your opinion that's a function of our rental cost, or do you think that's just a function of knowledge of our airport?
I think it's probably mostly a function of, like, the airport is not as well known maybe in the Bay Area region as it could be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And with the closing of Reed Hillview, and then with the limitations on what is going to be available, I would expect that backlog would go significantly higher. And with the rates that they were paying, where they're coming from, I'm also thinking that maybe our rates might be a bargain.
Well,
For a non-pilot, that's a pretty easy assumption.
Mm-hmm. I'm just
But
looking
if
for.
you do rent out there, rent a hangar,
Mhm.
it's high.
Mhm.
So it depends on whether or not you use the airport. So the airport's for pilots, and it should be based on that need, not generating revenue to balance budgets.
Has it traditionally been used for a service, or has it been used as a profit center?
well, certainly when you look at the airport's budget, hangar rents is a significant revenue in terms of the funding that is received at your airport. So it's one of the significant things. We have about 100 hangar units approximately. So that's not to say that it's purposely by design. So again, if you go back into FAA protocols, they expect you to have an annual increment on your leases. And so I think, again, if you go back to, based on the little bit of research I was able to do, I did not see what founded the rate prior to 2018, but talking with airport staff since 2018, it's been a factor of annual increases that have raised it to the place that it's at now. And again, so I would suggest that it is, it would be a good thing for us to accomplish a rent study when we can afford that and move forward with it, because I think that's both fair to the tenants, and it's more representative than just a survey or a comparable of local airports.
Thank you.
I just wanted to make one comment. I can't comment on the rents, but I do think there should be a list of the repairs that need to be done in alignment with what the cost of the leases are and what the long-term leases are that we have. There may, it seems like a regular T hangar, and I don't know about every other rental, but it's renewed every year. So unless you do something wrong, cause a fire or crash into another plane or do something bad, it's annually renewed. You don't have to re-sign it. But, and then the increases keep coming, but you don't always see the repairs done that need to be done on hangar doors and things like that. So I think those two things need to kind of align with where it's that money going that you're paying for the hangar, and if there are improvements being made. I realize there's good assets at the airport. We have the best weather. There are good things about it. There are no hangars available at Watsonville. San Martin probably has very limited, if any. They're also owned by Santa Clara County, and so they're part of Reed Hillview. So if both of those go, then we really need to rev up our hangar space and increase that, not just for value, not for revenue, but also because it brings in other people to highlight our airport and bring economic development to the community. Do we have any other comments from the commissioners? Do we want to keep this as an item for the next agenda, just to keep it on the forefront, or? Okay.
So I might suggest that, again, we're going to be going through the exercise with the city process of developing an airport budget for the next fiscal year. So certainly I can tell you that we don't have an appropriation for this kind of thing going out and doing a rent study this fiscal year. So at least through June 30, this is not going to be something that we would pursue. And again, I alluded to the fact that we used a airport consultant under the planning services for conducting the rent study, because you do want it to be documented and done in a way that basically it meets the threshold of what FAA is looking for. So in doing that, the airport is getting ready to go out to RFQ for both engineering as well as construction management and inspection, and then a separate RFQ for planning services and environmental services. So I would say it would be appropriate to bring it back to the commission sometime in the probably August to September timeframe.
Thank you for that. I think it might be a good idea just to leave it on the agenda, and that way if there's nothing to discuss, we can just not discuss it and just keep it as an item for topic of conversation. No other comments on the hangar rents? I will move to our last item under commission business, which is runway crossing and access to taxiways by individuals. Report out by the airport director.
Yeah, so number one, the airport has rules and regulations. That's chapter 13 of the municipal code. That is a section in your commission binders. So, and if I'm not sure for for you, Chair, and Commissioner Martin and Commissioner Hughes. I don't know, we stuck it in the new one, so I have those that I can hand out if you don't have them available. So, okay. So, with that being said, so the idea of the rules and regulations is to, try to capture the requirements, the rules and regulations of FA, certainly. We also get some things from Caltrans in terms of that might affect that you would write into your rules and regulations, but it's my understanding that the rules and regulations are fairly old and have not been updated by the airport. So again, something that we might look forward to doing in the future here is an update of our rules and regulations. And many airports also have a commercial minimum standards document, which is something that's developed for little different reason. So to stay on the topic at hand, when discussing runway crossing and access to the taxiways, there is several sections of the municipal code, chapter 13, that actually addresses that. So so section 24.120, access to runways, taxiways, and aprons, is one of the main items in terms of discussion. So give me 1 second here. So this section reads, let's see.
Could you
Nope.
just let us know what section you're reading?
Yes, 1324.120.
Thank you.
Says access to runways, taxiways, or apron. No person shall enter upon any runway or taxiway or apron of the airport except in an aircraft without the express consent of the manager. In this case, under the municipal code, manager means the city manager or the city manager's designee, which at this point, the airport manager or director is the designee.
Can you just let me know whether the airport regulations need to be reviewed and approved by city council if there are changes made to them, or is it something you bring forward to the city manager?
So it would be something that would go to your council, because this is,
Yeah, they would have to be approved by the city council, because they are city ordinances. I mean, in my mind, the procedure would be that they would come to you first for a recommendation to the city council, and then the city council would determine whether or not to approve those.
Thank you. So in section 1324.120, when it talks about without express consent of the manager, meaning city manager or airport director, as you outlined, what is that express consent? And is it just a one-time thing?
well,
Because it leaves it wide open there.
yes. So number one, I have not seen a file where the predecessor in my role has given any express consent. So I would say that there is an implied consent when you have a lease that you've entered into with the airport. But again, there's a difference between accessing into what they call transitioning from the land side onto the air side. So we have auto gates and we have pedestrian gates. And so if you're talking about the transition there, when you come through the fence to access the air side, it's supposed to be minimized in terms of any kind of vehicular movements within where aircraft can be operating. So that can be right behind the administrative offices. You've got the T hangars, even around the conference room we've spoke of tonight. That's an area where aircraft from the T hangars need access to get out to apron and then on outwards to the taxiways and runways. And so, but there is 2 auto access gates in terms of right there by the east side, by the airport offices, and then there's a west side gate if you needed to go over to the hangars there. So one thought about how you might implement this rule is to say there are certainly commercial businesses out here that need, or operations that need to be able to go across the runway, but there's a handful of those, right? So you have the mechanics on the field that might need to go back and forth and move an aircraft. So that's mechanic businesses, our fixed-based operator, Hollister Jet Center, and the Jet Center also, they do things as well in terms of placing aircraft on the apron, and so they're kind of in charge of how the apron gets managed, et cetera. And so they may have need to go out and look at the conditions of that and where aircraft are moving. So, but essentially, you know, my thought is kind of like if you have a street legal vehicle, you probably shouldn't be crossing the runway. It's intended for you to go out the auto access gate and around and come through. And so I know that is inconvenience for some people. But again, if we're putting safety first and we're putting normal protocols that a visiting aircraft coming to the airport can expect, that they expect vehicular movements to be very minimized. So to that extent, when we're talking about outside of the approved uses in general for most tenants, that would be if you have a street legal vehicle. I think that the rule could be implemented that you would have, the expectation would be as you go out the gate and you go around. We also have a kind of a quasi perimeter road that follows inside the fence, but that means from the east side, if you're going over to the west side, you have to travel south past the CAL FIRE location, and then you would enter on to basically where we've had previous pavement grinding spread out, and it's kind of become a packed road, if you will, for most of it. The concern there is when you come off of that kind of surface, you are tracking on what's called foreign object debris or you know, rocks and things that can get in the way. So now when you have a prop wash either from a fixed wing aircraft or a helicopter, that FOD is something that can become a projectile and do damage to other aircraft or somebody's car at their hangar, etc. So so I think at this point, you know, that's a pretty good way to look at implementing it, is to say if you have a street legal vehicle, you should get to the other side of the airport by going out the gate and coming around on the street. And then we have various sections that talk about pedestrians. So section 1324.170, that reads, no pedestrian shall be upon any taxiway or landing area of the airport without first obtaining permission from the manager, with the exception of mechanics who are by necessity required to be on a taxiway or landing area to remove damaged aircraft. And so I think that's pretty clear as to that situation. So, well, well, flight instruction, I would beg to differ. It is not standard at airports that a flight instructor would be on the taxiway, even if they have a pilot that's soloing. So that's not standard.
Be wrong there.
I was going to talk about that subject. I do think there should be some exceptions, but the exceptions should be at the airport director's.
Perhaps set aside a little sliver of the apron. Jeff, maybe put aside a little sliver of the apron by 2.4 or 3.0, and make it a designated area so that it's not needed to get your blessing every single time they want to solo a student?
Yes, to your point, Commissioner, the section 1324-170 for pedestrians, it says that no pedestrian shall be upon a taxiway or a landing area, meaning runway. So I'm not against someone being on the apron, although I would suggest that if you are going to be a pedestrian and you're, let's say you ride a bike to a point to then be able to talk to your student or whatever your purpose is, but you should have a purpose if you're riding your bike or walking to a place out on the apron. It should not be just for any given reason, right? So let's assume like you should have a safety vest, because when you're in an aircraft, if you're a pilot, you have you know, the thinner, the smaller the profile, it's harder to see. So to that extent, I would ask that if we are going to have uses where you're going out onto the apron, either on like a bike to a point or as walking out there, and that if you're going to be out there for an extended period of time, I would say probably more than a couple minutes, then it'd probably be a good idea to have a safety vest or some sort of neon coloring so that you stand out.
I would like to recommend that the airport provide designated Hollister Airport vest that are tied to that individual that's been given that, so you know who that is. I don't know if that's possible.
Chair Wells, if I could just jump in, this item is agendized as an informational report.
All right.
So if you would like to provide actual direction to staff, they can bring it back to the next meeting as an item to seek direction.
I agree.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you for that.
Okay. And then lastly, the other section that kind of applies to that is 13.24.420. And that section reads, so operation of motorized ground vehicles. No person shall operate any motor vehicle on the airport except in accordance with the provisions of these rules and the laws of the state of California for the control of such vehicles. The airport apron was designed for aircraft use and for safety reasons. Vehicular traffic must be kept at an absolute minimum. So that's your FAA regulation there. No person shall operate, drive, or propel any motor vehicle on any landing area of the airport or on the operational apron without the permission of the manager. The privilege of this use may be revoked at any time. As used in this section, the term motor vehicle includes any vehicle other than an aircraft, including bicycles. Now, there is some distance up and down the aprons. So again, I think provided we have some specific purpose, such as maybe the flight instructors, if they want to be able to ride a bike to a certain designated place on the apron and then do what they need to do there, I think that would be something that we could consider giving some permission for. And then there might be another use where someone would want to be out looking at checking the facility. So that would be like maybe the Hollister Jet Center might use a bicycle because they have an unobstructed view as they're moving around out there. So outside of that, I would say bicycles are basically going to be something that we would want to discourage, to be consistent with the FAA intent here.
Thank you for that. Do we have any comments? We can't really comment on the bylaws or the municipal code, but we can agendize it for next time, and maybe we can have a chance to review it and then bring back items that we think need to be updated or changed? Is that the will of the commission? All right, since there are no other items on the commission business, we'll move to item 9, staff and commission reports. We have a report out on the airport signs on San Felipe Road, updates of the size of the signs.
Yes, so I had reported out previously that back in December, I believe it was, that the city staff had found an airport standard sign for a street sign and put it up. It basically just reads Hollister Municipal Airport with an arrow pointing towards the airport entry. So both on going north on San Felipe as well as south. The size of the sign was 36 by 36. So at the encouragement of our city manager, the city staff was able to find a sign that is also standard, but in an upgraded version, 60 inches by 42 inches, reading Hollister Municipal Airport, with both an arrow and a symbol of an aircraft as well. So we have received the direction to purchase said sign and install. So that is the report out on that particular item.
Any questions by other commissioners? I say yay. Improvements. I think a lot of people will be happy for that. I would like to add some items to the next agenda under commission business, and then I'd also like to add an item under staff and commission reports. Should I do that now?
Yes.
Under staff and commissioner reports, I'd like to have a report out for an agenda item on the almond project. I noticed that on the city council agenda there is an item for making adjustments to the subdivision agreement, and so I would like the airport director to report out on providing us an overview of those changes. If anyone doesn't know, the almond project is the new Amazon. And so we just want to make sure that it's not going to impact the airport any more than it is. I'd also like to get a report out on long-term leases with whether it's CAL FIRE, the Elks Lodge, and other big airports, including the FBO. I think
we were just talking about the appropriateness of the almond project, but so
Okay,
if
sorry.
you could start on your second request again, I'm sorry.
Okay, I'm sorry. A report out on long-term leases, such as CAL FIRE, Elks Lodge, and the FBO, and if there are any other long-term leases. Just to give us an idea.
The context of the report out that you're asking for?
Do we have 30-year leases that are coming up, 20-year leases? What the terms are for the larger hangars?
Okay.
Is that appropriate to ask for that?
So you would like kind of like maybe a schedule of the leases, which leases maybe are coming up for renegotiation, kind of the end of the term, let's say in the next 5-year window, something like that?
Yes,
As a
that
place to
would be
start?
great.
Okay. So we can do a report out of those leases that are expiring in the next 5 years.
Great, thank you.
Is there any further context to the request?
What's the will of the commission?
Rates that they're paying, and then how how they compare to comparable rates that are happening in the other airports.
That might be a little bit more in depth than what we have bandwidth to go into to get, like, find comparables at every airport, et cetera, to report back on that. 1 second for a question to the attorney. Okay, so, so yes, we can include the rates for the particular kinds of categories of leases, and then, if we are able to provide any comparable information for a sense of that, I will note that in the request as well.
One more comment on that. If you have a long-term lease and it's coming up for renewal, who decides whether to extend that for another 10, 15, 20 years? Is it something the airport director decides, the city, and does the commission have any discretion in that, as far as just being able to have discussion before those are renewed?
I mean, absent any other designated authority, city council approves all contracts. However, I don't know if they have designated that authority to either the commission or the manager. But in general, unless it's been designated, it would go to the city council. More detail could be provided in that report.
That would be helpful. Thank you.
It's been my experience that most leases indicate who, whether it's like the city/airport would be the one to notify that we want an extension, or in other cases it'd be the tenant would be notifying us that they want the extension, right, within a certain period of time. So yeah, based on the fact that they would want to negotiate, then we would negotiate the terms, and then that would be something that would be presented to certainly the city council. But I would hope that would also be something that we would start to be bringing to the airport commission, and having you guys make a recommendation on these items.
Thank you. It would be nice to know that they're coming up on the city council agenda so that we can weigh in if we want to attend that meeting, if it's not going to be discussed in front of us. For other agendized items for the next agenda, I would like to add under commission business, item A, removal of the old military buildings, including an update on Brownsville grant or other types of funding.
You said to remove it, or
No,
to keep it
I would
on?
like to add these specific items. So item A, item B, update on the EAA-HA building and restrooms, I guess we would add. An update on the 4th of July fireworks show. An update on the CAL FIRE helipad. A discussion of hangar rents, or an update on that, or a report out. And then item G, runway crossings and access to taxiways. I don't know if that should be the item, or if it's a discussion of the code, the airport municipal code. So in line with those items, but possible amendments to several of the items in that municipal code.
So I would caution us on two things. So number one, when we talk about hangar rents, we talked about what the process looks like if we're going to recommend a change to our rates, which would have to be approved by the city council. So at that point, you know, the hangar rents, we have to follow the terms of the lease that's in place now. So there's not much we can do there without coming back with a recommendation to the city council of some nature, in which case you also would want to make that done as like an airport study where it's actually documented. So so again, I'm not sure what the intent of just keeping it on here. I think we are well aware that it's been quite a while since there's been an effort to look at the rents, and it really needs to be done at the level of an actual rent study. And then that being said, when you talk about item G, again, we're talking about the municipal code that is in place now, and so, you know, where do we go from here? I think it's up to staff in terms of how we try to implement those things that are in the municipal code now. The next step then would be as if we want to make recommendations for changes to this or updates to the rules and regulations. And that again is something we can look at as an exercise. But again, typically when you've had a set of rules and regulations that have been in place for a very, very long time, this would be something that I would consider to put under the planning consultant RFQ as a service that we might want to engage in, is looking at an update so that we can make sure that the rules that are put in place, they're not coming from one person's personal experience or professional experience. It's coming from the standpoint of what are standard rules at all airports, because the goal of this airport is to reach maximum utilization to benefit the members of the public and the aviation flying community, right? And to that extent, we should have rules that are standard rules as other airports do, so that when pilots fly in that are visiting to us, they don't get in unexpected situations occurring at our airport, right? And I would hope that everyone can agree with that. But that is truly the intent of FAA, why they fund an aviation system in this country, is so that the public can use this, and they're a public use airport for the aviation community, right? And so we should have, those standards should be standard amongst all airports. There shouldn't be something unique happening at the Hollister Airport as compared to another GA airport.
I agree with you. I think the other commissioners probably do too. I think it just, I would just like to see guidance on, being able to provide guidance on what in the, I keep calling them bylaws, but the municipal code, as far as what is being left up to the city manager or the airport director, as far as just making sure everyone knows what the process is, and being able to have some input into how they go about getting approval to do things across the airport or around the airport, at the apron, or.
Yeah, so some of the items, yeah, I think we could talk to that aspect of it, sure.
So do you want to keep it as such for the next agenda, or do you want to reword that, or just leave it and then we can have a discussion?
I would say bring it back either at the next or one of the next two as appropriate. Yeah.
What is the will of the commission?
That's fine if we don't make any decisions at this point. If we feel that there's need to be more discussion, then we can, and particularly if we felt that more public concern could be expressed, then I think we'd welcome it so that we can make a good decision.
And I also agree, if I may, I agree, just to bring it back, I can also check in with the other, airports. Like I mentioned, having a relationship just with being able to ask questions to local agencies and other airports in this case, to maybe get those statistics or that information. I think it will help to bring it back for the next meeting.
Well, certainly most airports, their rules and regulations is in their municipal code, right? So those that are municipal airports, and so yeah, the rules and regulations is something that's typically available on most websites through the city websites. Yeah.
Okay, so we have items A, B, C, E, and G. Instead of doing the hangar runs, we're just taking that off for now until we can plan for a study. Is that the will of the commission? Or do we want to leave it on there? item F for hangar rents study? Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we should wait till we do the study until we actually have some real.
Comparison,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly, some real data to discuss.
Okay.
Make sure you add that to the budget for next year,
Hmm.
that study.
Maybe we can get a grant.
Well, if it won't get on the budget, then you won't be able to do the study next year,
Mm.
so when that's open, you should.
When does the budget process start? Now?
Yeah, I suspect that we're kind of, we did a quasi mid-year review now, and then, so yeah, I would expect that we'll be starting on the next fiscal year budget anytime.
Is it appropriate to add that item to the next agenda?
We budget for professional services, and so to the extent that we can, in balancing other given priorities, I think there's a lot of different funding needs here, so I do believe that the rent study is a priority. Is that the most immediate priority, given some of the other things that we need to try to fund? That, again, we'll have to just look at that in the bigger pictures of things, so.
Thank you. I think in the past, the commission has been able to review the budget before it's actually going, I mean, not that we approve it, but we need to kind of see what's on there. Is that appropriate, or can we recommend that?
Looking at the duties of the commission, one of those duties is, to act as an advisory body to the city council on all aviation and airport matters, communicate written and oral recommendations pointed to them. In my mind, recommending the airport budget to the city council would be appropriate.
I'm in agreement with that.
Okay.
Would it be something that we have a public meeting, or is it something we would discuss separately? Or,
All of your meetings are
Should be
required to be
public.
in public.
okay. So is it the will of the commission to add that as an item on the agenda?
Yes, and I would also just note there for the commission that, based on the budget calendar is set by the city for going to the city council, therefore there will probably need to be consideration of either different dates than our normal dates so that we're getting your input on the budget prior to going to the council for certain deadlines. So we may need flexibility and or adding extra meetings to accommodate that involvement in the budget process. So.
I appreciate that, and I think I'm willing to make those extra meetings because it's really, really important. I'm sure the other commissioners do too. I hope they do. I don't have any other items. Do any of the other commissioners have any other items to add to the next agenda?
I do not.
And just so you know, the airport directors made it clear that if you do, in between meetings, have something to add to the agenda, you can email him. Is that correct?
Yep.
So I'm just doing that for the new commissioners, so you know that we're not set for today on what the next agenda is,
But
as
I
long
would
as there's
also-
time to post it.
But I would also encourage members of the public, tenants, with their concerns to come and meet with me. So I'm more than
And that's
willing
on
to-
record.
I'm more than willing to try to discuss items there and there's the possibility that I'm not aware of what some tenants may have concerns. And we do, it is difficult for staff to know about, you were mentioning hangar repairs. Without communication from the tenants, we don't know what may be necessary, right? So, and a lot of times you can't catch the staff just in a 5-second, like, hey, give me a list as we're running to go do something. Coming in or giving us an email or something like that gives us a chance to start, so.
Thank you, Director. By doing that, it'll probably save some time at these meetings as well.
Yes.
Good input, appreciate it. If there are no other comments or questions from the commission, I would like to, does anyone have a motion to adjourn?
A motion to adjourn the meeting.
Do I have a second? All in favor? Meeting adjourned at 8:10.